Today we're going to talk about the slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. Again, just a little bit different perspective. And just a little bit of review here is that parallel lines have the same slope. And if you were with us for the last notes, what we did is that we highlighted, even though I'm not the biggest fan of highlighting, we highlighted that. Parallel lines have the same slope. And then what happens is that perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. Opposite means that one of the slopes will be positive, the other slope will be negative. And reciprocal means that we flip the fraction. What's on bottom of the fraction becomes on top. So when we talk about the slopes of parallel lines, it means these two equations to the left, in slope-intercept form, our slope is -3 on both of those. They are the same. But over here on our right-hand slope-intercept form equations, we have slope is 3/4, and then slope is -4/3. Again, opposite reciprocal means that the signs are different. One is positive, one's negative. And then secondly, we flipped the fraction. And what we're going to do today is we're going to write equations of lines. And one of the things that I have found that's helpful for me is when I'm reading the problem, it says write the equation of the line that is parallel. Then circling this word right there just to remind me what to do. And as we look over here on our line, that is in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Our slope of this line is 1/4. We need to identify the slope. The other piece of information that we have is it says find the equation, write the equation of the line that is parallel to the line y equals 1/4 x plus 3 and passes through the point -8,3. -8,3 is x1 and y1. So when we fill this in, we're going to go back into the point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Again, I write that down every single time so that you don't have to sit somewhere and memorize something. The more you write it down, I hope the more that you can remember it. I'm going to fill in these values. Our y1 is 3. Our slope is 1/4. Our x1 is -8. So our equation becomes y minus 3 equals 1/4 times x minus a -8. And to the best of my understanding, the OST test will accept that answer. But just in case, y minus 3 equals 1/4 minus a negative is plus positive. Write the equation of the line that is perpendicular to the line. Well, this time we're going to deal with perpendicular to the line. Y equals 1/6x plus 8. And it passes through that point 12, -5. Well, again, our equation of our line is in slope-intercept form, which means that it's solved for y. And consequently, we can identify the fact that our slope is the number in front of the x, which is 1/6. Again, a reminder, the equation has to be solved for y. But this problem particularly says perpendicular slope. So over here underneath the point, I'm going to use the symbol for perpendicular, which is kind of that upside down capital T. Perpendicular slope, then we need to find the opposite reciprocal. So we're going to take 1/6 and we're going to flip that. It becomes 6/1. No, you don't have to write the 1. And since 1/6 is positive, we need to make this slope negative. In other words, -6 is going to be our perpendicular slope if we simplify that just a little bit. It's fine if you write -6/1. We're going to fill this back into the point slope form, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Fill in our values. 12 is x1. -5 is y1, and we fill them in. So it's going to be y1 is -5. Our slope is -6. x1 is 12. Y minus and if we simplify this a little bit more because we have the minus the negative, we end up with y plus 5. Minus the negative is plus a positive equals -6 times x minus 12. Write the equation of the line that's parallel to the line 4x minus 2y equals 10 and passes through the point -1, 9. I don't know that it helps, but I hope that it might help. A couple of new issues on this problem is that 4x minus 2y equals 10, we don't know what the slope is from that line yet. So we need to start there before we can write the equation that's parallel. So in other words, what we have to do is we have to put this equation in slope-intercept form. And slope-intercept form means solve for y. We're going to take 4x minus 2y equals 10. We're going to subtract 4x from both sides. And it's -2y equals -4x plus 10. We need to solve for y. So -2 times y, we're going to divide by -2. And -2, -2. We end up with y equals 2x minus 5. -4 divided by -2 is positive 2x. Positive 10 divided by -2 is -5. Our slope of this line, now that the equation is solved for y, is 2. And that's the slope that we need because parallel lines have the same slope. So we've got m equals 2. And then here's our x1. And the 9 is the y1. And we can finish this problem by putting those values back into y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. The point slope form. So filling in. y1 is 9. Our slope is 2. x1 is -1. We have y minus 9 equals 2 times x minus a -1. Again, you can leave this in that format. And sometimes you may need the y minus 9 equals 2 times x plus 1. Minus the negative gives us plus a positive. Ultimately, what's important here is knowing how to find the slope and knowing what kind of slope you're working with, parallel or perpendicular. Example A, line M has a slope of -2. Line N is perpendicular to line M and passes through the point 1, -3. Write the equation of line N. Well, line M has slope of -2. We don't even have an equation to work with, but we know that we need to deal with perpendicular. So our perpendicular slope then is, let me start with one other thing here. Since our original slope is -2, we could say -2/1. And then perpendicular means that we're going to take the opposite reciprocal. So we're going to flip the fraction. So it's going to become 1 over 2. And instead of negative now, the opposite's going to cause us to change the sign. I'm going to write the positive there, but you don't have to write the positive. So now we have everything that we need. Once again, 1 is x1, negative 3 is y1. I'm going to fill that back into the form y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So we're filling those values in. X1 is, or y1 is negative 3. Slope is 1/2. And our x1 is 1. So we end up with y minus, and then x minus 1. And if we simplify it a little bit more, we get y plus 3 equals 1/2 times x minus 1. Point slope form. Line J has a slope of 1/3. Line K is parallel to that. It passes through the point negative 7,5. So here's x1, here's y1, and create the equation for line K. Well, once again, slope is 1/3. But what we know about parallel lines is that parallel lines have the same slope. So now we have all the information we need to go back and fill in y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We fill in our values. y1 is 5. Our slope is 1/3. Our x value is negative 7. So we have y minus y1 equals 1/3 times x minus a negative 7. Again, you can leave it like that. Not my favorite way, but it's more because I've taught algebra for so long is why it's not my favorite method. The state test takes it, so I need to be in sync with that. We get y minus 5 equals 1/3 times x plus 7. Number 10. Leaves a little bit room for creativity on this one because we have line P has slope of negative 2/5 and line Q is parallel to line P. And we want to write two possible equations for both line P and line Q. We want to write it in slope-intercept form, which is the y equals mx plus b. But the only real information that I've given you in this particular problem is the slope and then that they're parallel. So we make up something. And what we know from both of them is that parallel lines have the same slope. So y equals negative 2/5 x plus 10. The thing that's important here is that we've got the negative 2/5. Because over here on line Q, all that it says is write two possible equations for both line P and line Q. Well, this one's going to be y equals negative 2/5 x. And maybe I say something like minus 7. It doesn't matter there what we put for the y-intercept, which is the plus 10 or the negative 7. We just want to have two equations that are parallel. And if you're unsure, then this is something that you could type into Desmos and look at those pictures to make sure that everything is okay. Number 11. Get the equation of a line that's parallel to the graph below and passes through the point negative 3, negative 4. So as we take a look at this one here to get close to finishing, we need to be able to pick 2 points on this graph. And it doesn't always work, but if I can, I like to pick the x-intercept and the y-intercept on the graph. And on this particular problem, we can't. It hasn't happened. On some of the other practice that we've had, we haven't been able to see super clearly. I'm trying to get better here. But I picked this point and this point on a graph. And we want to find the slope. Remember that slope is rise over run. So if we look at this, we're going to rise 2, and we're going to run 1, 2, 3, 4. So our slope is 2 over 4. We are going uphill, so this is going to be a positive slope line. And again, you can leave it as 2/4. 2/4 is 1/2. So whichever one works for you. We want to write the equation of a line that's parallel and passes through that point -3, -4. So now that we've identified our slope, because parallel lines have the same slope, we're going to go back and we're going to fill in y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And we fill in these values of y1 is -4. And our slope is 1/2 or 2/4, whichever one you prefer. And x1 is -3. So we've got y minus, and then we've got x minus. And yet again, the double negative is the same thing as plus a positive. So we can rewrite this as y plus 4 equals 1/2 times x plus 3. So lastly, we did parallel with our graph. Let's do perpendicular with our graph. And as we take a look at this, unfortunately on this one we can't pick the x-intercept and the y-intercept because they're not whole value points. But this value right there, that point, looks like it's a point right on the corner of our graph, as well as this point. And our slope, once again, is rise over run. Although we went down 3 and to the right 2. So our slope is -3/2. It says write the equation of the line that is perpendicular to the line graph below and passes through the point 2, 3. There's our slope, but we need perpendicular slope. And our perpendicular slope means that we're going to flip this fraction. So 3 over 2 is going to become 2 over 3. And since our slope is negative, this is going to be positive. No, you don't have to write the positive, but I want to emphasize the opposite reciprocal. And now we have everything that we need to go back and fill in y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So we fill these values in. 3, and then our slope is 2/3, and our x1 is 2. So this is y minus 3 equals m times x minus 2. And we don't even have to do anything else on this problem for a point slope. We didn't have to simplify at all.